Hi, I'm Chris, and we're back continuing our video series on creating a game in GameLab. So, right now, we have it so that our collider function recognizes when the plane collides with a bee, and it creates a new bee flying across the screen. And if the bee makes it all the way to the other side, we still have a new bee created. So we have this endless stream of obstacles coming across the screen that our plane can dodge or get hit by. So that's where our program is, but it's not too fun to just have them disappear and then come back across the screen. We want something else to happen in the game. We want to see if we could keep track of maybe score and maybe keep track of a certain number of lives that we have. So maybe we'll give ourselves a certain number of lives after which, like our game will end, or it'll track our score up to that point. So first, let's see just how we can introduce text, and that's what this lesson is going to be all about. So here, under your drawing tab, so you'll see down here, you start seeing a bunch of text options, and you can adjust the text itself. So str means string, and basically encoding anything that is a string just means that it's going to be text. So whatever you type into a string is going to appear on your screen. And then you can also choose how to align your text, and you can change the font, you can change the size. So you have a lot of options to customize the text. But let's see if we can just get text to display on the screen. So first things first, let's pull in this text functionality here. And an interesting aspect of this is that location matters, and I want to show something here. So if we pull it in here, and our text just says, for right now, let's just say hello. And that should appear at position 0, 15. So this would be kind of towards the top left of the screen. And if I hit run, if I notice, I don't really see anything towards that top left of the screen there. So something weird is happening that's making our text not show up. And that's because of where I pulled it into the program. So when you're dealing with text, just remember location, location, location. If you want your text to appear on top of the background, on top of the characters, on top of any of those other components, then you want your text to come after draw sprites is called. Because what's happening when your text is up here, so you're actually creating the text, but then all of the sprites, meaning the plane, the bees, and the background, they're all being drawn over that text so you don't see it displayed. So if you put your text after draw sprites is called, now let's see what that looks like. And you can maybe see it's extremely tiny, but you can maybe see in this top left corner here that we have a little bit of text. It's almost impossible to see though because it's way too small. So let's change our text size. And the default is 12. Let's try, I don't know, let's try 35. Let's see how that looks. So we're gonna, okay, so we see it doesn't quite fit on the screen, so I might want to adjust these X and Y positions a little bit. Looks like we want to move it over a little bit. Maybe instead of 0, we'll go 15, and we want to move it down a little bit. Let's try maybe 25, and let's see how that looks. So let's try again. Okay, so it says hello towards the top left of the screen there. And if I'm playing the game, the text is not too distracting there, but if we wanted to move it to a different position, maybe I want my score to be displayed, let's say down here, for example, under this mountain and out of the way of the interactive part of the game where the obstacles are interacting with the plane. So we can move those X and Y positions, and here it looks like if we start our text, maybe around here would be good. So that would be X is about 275 and Y is 350. Let's try those values and let's see how that looks. So 275, 350. I might move it over a tiny bit. 275 is a little far over. Let's try 265. And then I want to move it down also a tiny bit. Instead of 350, let's maybe do 360. Let's see what that looks like. Okay, so that's not bad. So that's a pretty good place for my text to be displayed. And so instead of having hello, we want it to be our score. So this is going to tell us what our score is. But we also want the score to be a function. or a variable rather, that is going to change, but we want it to have functionality to it. We want it to interact with what's happening in the game. So we have to introduce score as a variable, and I'll show you where we want to introduce it into our program. So first, anytime we're introducing a new concept or new variable, we have to declare it at the beginning of the program. And what do we want our score to start at? So it makes sense for our score to start at 0. So we're going to introduce var score equals 0, which basically just means that we're setting this idea, this variable of score, and we're going to set the initial value equal to 0. And then in our program, let's see when we want our score to change. So in theory, we want our score to change when we dodge a B. We should get some sort of bonus or increase in score. And then when we get hit by a B, we want our score to decrease. So let's take a look at where that's going to take place. So the first one is going to be if we dodge the B, and that's going to be inside this conditional here starting in line 24. So if the value of the B for the x-axis gets to be less than 0, that means the B has made it all the way to the left side of the screen, which means we successfully dodged it. So we want our score to increase when that happens. And the way we're going to do that, so we're going to reassign our variable of score, but I'm going to do this with text, sorry. We want it to be, so we've already declared the variable, but now we want to reset its value. We want our score to be equal to the old score, but then maybe we'll give ourselves, let's say 5 points. And then what do you think we want to do if the plane displaces the B? Meaning if the plane gets hit by the B. So in that case, we would want our score to decrease. So again, we've already declared it. So here we're just going to call that variable score. And we're going to set that equal to our previous score, but then maybe we'll subtract 5 for that. And you can adjust these values as you'd like. So if you want it to be easier to have a higher score, you can add more points if you successfully dodge the B, and if you want harsher penalties, you can subtract more points if the plane gets hit by the B. But now, if we do this, so if we run our program, believe it or not, those new functions, those new functionalities that we added when we called score into those if statements, it's actually working, but we don't see that it's working, because if you look, all that we see is you see that the score just says score in the text at the bottom of the screen, and we have this stagnant value. And that's because we need the actual variable score. Remember, this, what we had here, this is called a string. Whatever's inside those quotation marks will display exactly as written. But we want this to display the word score, but then next to it we want it to be a number, and that number we want to correspond to our variable score. So this text here will be score that we see, but then the number that corresponds to this variable score that we're then calling into our text. So now let's try to reset this, and it says score equals 0, and then we see that our score adjusts. So when we successfully dodge, we get points, and when we have a collision with a B, we lose points. So here I'm at 10, 15, 20, back to 15, back to 10, back to 5. And so our score is working properly on that. One thing I might change slightly about this is it looks like when you get to bigger numbers, the score kind of runs off the screen a little bit. So I might change this one to, let's say, 260. See if I can just move it over slightly so that it's a little easier to read in that bottom right corner of the screen there. And that seems to be easier to read, and looks like even when you have those 2-digit numbers, that everything fits onto the screen appropriately. So we're in good shape. So a mini homework assignment, and then in our next lesson we'll review it, but see if you can figure out how to add a certain number of lives that when you get hit by an obstacle will count down by 1 each time. So maybe you start with 5 lives or 10 lives or 3 lives, however difficult you want to make it or however long you want your game to last. And we'll try to display that over here on the left. So stay tuned for our next video, and you can see how we can write in that code to add a counter for the number of lives, And then we'll talk about being able to end the game when lives get to 0. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you soon.